Hello and welcome to episode 69 of Off the Bandstand. My name is Christian Wiggs. I am your host. Today's episode is Max Darché, a trumpeter and educator living in New York City. As a protege of trumpet legend John Faddis, Max has thrived in the city, recording on Grammy-nominated albums, performing on Broadway, and making appearances at revered institutions such as Birdland, Carnegie Hall, and the Newport Jazz Festival. This episode was part of Bandstand Presents' ongoing series, The Residency, that facilitates community between the Austin and New York jazz scenes through collaborative shows with the Christian Wiggs Big Band, the Staple Monday Night Jam at the Elephant Room, educational sessions at Texas State University, and episodes of Off the Bandstand. In this episode, we chat about the stylistic influence of being a soloist and a lead player. We also talk about approaching our musical heroes in a way that is conducive to building relationships, and a bus ride home with a healthy array of disconcerting hazards. Moving on to the featured release of the week, this is Kinetic from the Stephen Feifke Big Band, which is Stephen's long-awaited debut big band album with over 20 of the foremost jazz musicians on the New York scene. The album features many of the familiar names that have become part of the Bandstand family, such as Brian Carter, Benny Benack III, John Lake, Robert Edwards, Dan Chmielewski, Stephen Feifke, and Max Darché holding it down on lead trumpet and flugelhorn. If you want to support this release directly, you can head over to StephenFeifkeMusic.com, and for all things Stephen all the time, you can follow him on Instagram at Stephen Feifke. On the calendar coming up for Bandstand Presents on Thursday, April 14th will be the Christian Wiggs Big Band meets Clark Summers, followed by on Friday, April 15th, Clark Summers Lens, and then finally on Saturday, April 16th will be Matisse Picard's solo piano show celebrating his latest release live at the museum here at Monk's Jazz Club. Tickets are available for the limited in-person audience at bandstandpresents.com and monksjazzclub.com, and as always, every show will be live streamed with links to donate in the top right-hand corner of the screen. That is it for all of the mentions and announcements this week. Let's dive into episode 69, Max Darché. This is Off the Bandstand. Man, on these little notes, I put these subcategory titles that are literally just for me. And the first one, I will spare you the majority of the low-hanging fruit jokes that are Big Lebowski jokes, but the first one just says, "It's a league game, Donny." Man, it's always the trumpet players that have these hidden talents. Like Mike is exceptional at golf, I like to say that he threw my back out on a Top Golf trip because I was woke up with a crick in my back and then went and played Top Golf, and I just knew that I needed to take it easy until he started swinging, and then I was like, well, I'm not going to make an ass of myself. I have to make the thing. But anyways, yeah, it is funny how there's all these hidden talents and jazz musicians who are also exceptional musicians. When did bowling start being a thing for you?
Oh man, I got into I didn't even know Mike was into golf. I didn't know that.
Really?
No.
Oh man.
I don't golf, so I would have to. I would be embarrassed to golf in front of Mike. But I got into bowling when I was in high school.
Okay.
I never did it as a kid or anything, other than a birthday party or something. But
sure.
It was a senior year gym elective instead of having gym class.
Okay.
You got a choice.
Okay.
And you got on this list, and then whoever the top 15 or 20 names on the list, it was passed down from the previous class.
Gotcha.
That you pick bowling. Because it was the least physical activity of, not that bowling is not physical, in some ways it can be.
Sure.
So that's how it came about. Kind of, I started getting into it, doing a once a week gym class on a Saturday morning, and then I got my friends into it, and then started bowling league and bowl some tournaments here and there. But
did you say Saturday morning?
Yeah.
So they were they were like, yeah, take a class. It's like the easier way out, but you're going to have to come in on Saturday.
That was the catch. Yeah.
Oh, man.
But it was only a handful of times. You know, it
Sure.
was like we would probably do it like 4 times or something, or 5 times.
Yeah.
The gym teacher would meet us at the bowling alley, and that was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very, very laid back. Better than, you know, running around the track.
Word.
At the high school. So
Word. Careful. The track people might cancel you for that
you're
comment.
right. They're
You know?
very, very true.
They're going to come around, man. I like that you said that, you know, before high school, it was just like you know, maybe going bowling occasionally at like birthday parties. Do you like to go now to kids' birthday parties and ruin their birthday parties by just going and like, they're like, Mom, I just got a spare. Boom, you know.
Yeah, I always ask for the lane right next to the birthday party, or the guys that are on a date with their girlfriend,
right?
And because they're both terrible,
at
bowling, and then I'll just try to get the lane right next to them just so I can throw a bunch of strikes and make everybody look bad.
Yeah, I mean, you've got like perfect form. Like I've seen the videos on Facebook. I've done the necessary, mild stalking. Do you feel like those guys who are trying to impress girlfriends are like acting as if they have good form, and you're just like this?
Oh yeah, no, they're totally acting. Yeah, it's 100%. They know they have no idea what they're doing as well. Nobody has any idea what they're doing when they're bowling.
Yeah,
like
fair enough.
99% of the population, it's just like you're just trying to find a way to pick a ball up, which you put your hand into, which you don't do in any other sport.
Sure.
And then like you're trying to find a way to take this ball with your hand in it and then walk up on this slippery wood.
Yeah.
And not fall over.
Fair enough. This slippery, you said they're oiled, right? I'm learning something.
The lanes are actually oiled, yes.
Okay.
A lot of people may or may not know that.
Yeah.
The best equation is it's like a golf course.
Okay.
To equate it to a golf course, where you see the hazards on the golf course, and you can, when they give you like an overhead view. Mm-hmm. And bowling, you can't really see where the oil is, but there is oil there, and where there's oil, the ball will not hook.
Okay.
It won't curve in, and so what you're trying to do is find the spot on the lane where there's just the right amount of oil, where you can get your ball to break into the pocket and get a strike. If you ever watch a PBA telecast, you'll actually see colored oil on the lane. So sometimes they have they put a dye in it and it's blue, so you can kind of see a little bit of what it looks like.
Word. This whole time I've just been taking margarine, not butter, because I'm frugal, but margarine, just putting it like right at the front. You can see that. I'm just trying to best my.
Hey, you got to everyone's got to play the game their own way, right?
Fair enough. Well, man, so you said that you started a league. Forgive me for not knowing. Is that like a competitive thing? Like, do you go?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
How far around like the area that you live in does it stretch?
Well, so for like a league, I bowl a weekly league, 2 weekly leagues, and then, it's in the same bowling alley every week. Yeah. A lot of it's just a hang, for the league stuff. It's mainly just hang with your teammates who are, some of my friends, who are non-musicians. So it's completely different. Yeah. Completely different kind of hang. And we just hang out. It's a social thing, but there's a competitive thing there too. We like to win. So that's kind of like my competitive outlet, whereas music is not competitive in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
When we're actually playing music, it's not competitive. I mean, being a musician in some ways is competitive. Yeah. Being part of the scene is competitive, but that's kind of my competitive outlet. But in terms of that, league play is mostly in the same spot. Tournaments can go all over. I don't do a lot of tournaments bowling, but there's local tournaments. I've done some in Vegas and Reno, El Paso, Texas. I was there. There's one yearly tournament that I go to that kind of goes all over the country. So
okay, fair enough. You said that the friends group was not necessarily like the musician side of things. Do you like having that kind of outlet where you can kind of turn the music side off and like get a break, get a rest?
Definitely, yeah. Okay. That's part of the whole. I think that's part of why I'm into it so much. It's because it's like a different. It's like a different world you're entering. Yeah. So we're just talking about football, which I do with musicians too, but sure. It's just a different kind of hang because we don't talk about music at all. I mean, if I'm hanging with musicians and we're just hanging, eventually the conversation ends back on we end up talking about something about music again, which is great. But it's nice to have the break. I know a lot of guys that have something they do. A couple fisher guys that they like to fish, either fly fishing or saltwater. They have something they do that's not related to music, and I think generally it's with a scene of people who are not in music. But
I would like to be able to tell you that I could give you a discernible, answer difference between fly fishing and saltwater fishing. I could not do it.
I don't have the foggiest idea. Yeah, I know it has something to do with the lures and everything. I know people who I can refer you to people who can tell you the exact differences. But
fair enough, man. I'm excited to learn more about. You said that bowling was like entering this other world with a group of people, not unlike that of entering a post-apocalyptic world. Via the Xbox, entering into Halo. That's a cool thing that that's a musician, to musician outlet as well. I mean, but you said that you guys don't get to play like that often because I'm sure everybody's just jobbing like crazy.
Right. Yeah. We got into, I used to play in college a little. Yeah. We would be practicing for hours and hours and we'd just be kind of fried. Yeah. So then we would go play Halo. Yeah.
Word.
And then recently, one of my friends, Jonathan Saraga, is a trumpet player, great trumpet player. He got me back into it. There's a group of New York musicians that are they're all playing again.
Amazing.
So I think it started probably during the pandemic as a way to do something when you're stuck at home. So, but yeah, it's tough getting everyone together. Everyone's gigging. Yeah. We got a whole little message thread we got going on Facebook trying to. When are you available? When can you play? When can you play? Yeah. So it's just another way for guys to kind of decompress after playing. Yeah. But again, since it's musicians, we always end up back. We're playing Halo. We have headsets, and we're talking to each other, and we're playing. And eventually, we're talking about some tune or some gig. Of course.
Are you on the main chat with all the 12-year-olds who are talking about
No, usually we're
smack?
On a private chat.
Okay.
So it's just all of us musicians we're either talking about what's happening in the game or we're on to some completely unrelated music topic that just takes a life of its own kind of.
I would implore you to get on that main chat, man, because it is very entertaining.
Oh, I'm aware. Yeah.
You will hear a lot of things.
Yes. And then on occasion we'll open it up. To the chat, and you find out you're getting beat by a bunch of 12-year-olds. But yeah, we try to pretend that doesn't happen. So.
Right. Well, there's a John Mulaney joke where he's like, 12-year-olds are the meanest people in the world because they will get to the thing that you don't like about you. They'll just be like, who's this guy? He may be 35, but he's got a high-pitched voice. And you're like, wait, what are you talking about? You're the one but now you've made me feel self-conscious. What gave you the power? It's crazy, man. They've got a sixth sense for insecurities.
You're totally right, man. It's just like a natural thing. The kids just, kids are smart like that. All kids like that. They sense things like that.
Yeah, man. What were you like as a teenager, kind of growing up and finding your footing? Did you feel kind of an assurance, sure of yourself? Because I know that you were playing multiple different instruments and seemed like you were excelling at them. Violin, trumpet, piano. That implies a certain amount of confidence to go into each one of these instruments and really pursue it. What was your demeanor like, kind of going through those formative teenage years?
I was always a pretty quiet kid. But music was kind of how, where I was able to kind of express my personality. Yeah. But as a trumpet player, I think that's where trumpet helped me because it's just naturally a little bit more in your face, and that's the opposite of how I am.
Interesting.
Normally. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why it works well for me because it kind of helps me express another side that I don't necessarily express in person all the time, unless I'm playing Halo. Yeah, and then all bets are off. But
man, I fully expect now whenever we get on this chat to like have the sound distorting in my ear from you screaming.
Absolutely,
just the complete inverse of what we're getting right now. You know?
That's pretty much the vibe, though. I mean, playing all those instruments. I was never an accomplished pianist or anything like that. But my main instrument, I started on violin, and then I got into trumpet. My brother encouraged me to take a band instrument, so I got into trumpet, and I really liked doing that. And I did them both simultaneously for a while. But after a few years, trumpet kind of became my focus.
Sure.
So I was still playing violin, I was still taking lessons, and but I wasn't doing much like out of school stuff like that. Whereas trumpet, I was constantly taking multiple lessons a week or rehearsals every day after school of various types, and then piano came a little later and became a more of a thing just for jazz harmony and theory and things like that.
Yeah. What was the motivation specifically to go to violin first?
That's the instrument I wanted to play when I was a kid.
Okay.
I don't know why. That was the instrument I always wanted to play. So I started that when I was about 9. And I liked it. It's also a very difficult instrument, violin. I mean, I've only played really violin and trumpet extensively. So I don't want to compare it. Here you can cancel me on this, but trumpet and violin are potentially the 2 hardest instruments you could play.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I can't imagine, violin you're playing, you put your finger just in the slightest of different spots, just on the angle, it's like you're half step off.
Yeah.
And there's no frets or anything. There's nothing to tell you where you're supposed to be. You can play the same note in how many different positions on different strings. It's a brutal instrument, and trumpet's the same way.
Yeah. I was going to say, it feels like both, especially with you being a lead player, is very temperamental, right?
Oh, it's a very temperamental instrument, yeah. Both of them are, but trumpet's more physical in that regard. You feel what you did the day before a little bit. If you overplay the day before, you come in, you can feel it on your face.
Word. Did you always have more of an affinity for kind of the quintessential lead players, or were you thinking, as your career was going off playing trumpet, maybe you'd be more of the solo chair or section player? Was it always lead?
No, not at all. I consider myself a jazz guy that plays lead.
Okay.
Which kind of separates me from a good amount of other lead players, probably. There are a fair amount of lead players who their whole life they were just good at playing high notes, and they were good at playing those parts, and so they always did it. The difference for me was I didn't have that when I didn't necessarily have the natural high chops or anything like that. So that's something that I worked on. I always was just playing jazz. I mean, when I started, I was playing like Dixieland all the time.
Yeah.
With a local band, I would go sit in with a local band, and then we got into more big band stuff in high school. And I went through years where I couldn't really play that high at all. And I had to really, really work on that to get that to happen. It's something that I listened to many great trumpet players like John Faddis or Lou Soloff or Greg Gisbert. These guys that can do everything. And that's kind of what I wanted to be able to do when I was in college. That's where I really wanted to work, to be able to even if I couldn't play lead at the time, I said, all right, let me see if I can get my chops together enough so I can play second.
Yeah.
Or I can help somebody play lead if they need help.
Yeah.
On a gig, and they say, hey, I need you to play a part for me.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my goal. And now I still do both. And that's one of the things I like doing, is being able to jump around. Some of the bands I play with, I'll play all 4 parts.
Yeah.
So it creates an interesting musical environment, because you got to be ready for anything.
Yeah.
But playing lead as a jazz guy, I think partly separates me from a lot of other guys, like I was just saying, because as a lead player, you're setting the phrasing for the band. And certain lead players, they're more just playing the notes, which is great, like you have to play the notes. But the phrasing comes second. Right. And I think one of the reasons why I work with some of the cats that I do is because they like the phrasing or the interpretation, which I got from studying jazz more. Because they're hearing it as a jazz guy, like Stephen.
Right.
Stephen Feifke, he's hearing as a jazz guy, and that's what he wants to hear from the phrasing of the band. He wants to hear it that way, and a lot of lead guys aren't necessarily as into that because they didn't study it.
Sure.
So it's kind of a different scene where you find that that there's guys playing with you sometimes that don't know that much about jazz.
Sure.
Now there are great lead players that studied the music and figured it out, but a lot of those guys, like I mentioned, like Faddis or Lou Soloff, those guys were all jazz guys, and they were immersed in the music, and then that's how they got to their lead playing abilities, partly through that, through learning how to phrase through that way. Snooky Young, for instance, was a great jazz player. But a lot of people don't know it.
Yeah,
played lead with Basie for all those years, and with the Tonight Show, but he could solo. A lot of the great lead players from that era, from like the big band era, were all soloists as well.
Yeah.
So that's where it has shifted a little bit in today's world. It seems that there's less guys that are soloing that play lead. There's very few.
Fair enough.
So
I mean, we are going to get you canceled for that. But
the trumpet playing community is a very dangerous community. So very highly opinionated and.
As a former trumpet player, yeah.
Right.
I know exactly.
How are your chops?
They need some work right now.
Need a little work.
Yeah. It's hard to find the time. I had a bunch of students for a little bit. Up until about 6 months ago, and then this is just a testament to like the nature of the horn, and like if you don't use it, you'll lose it thing. Is like one of my final students graduated high school. So then in like July, that was when like the last one dropped, and I just didn't pick up anymore. And the show kind of was taking off and all these different things. And then around, was that Veterans Day? That's the one in November, right?
Right.
Get called because I do a lot of booking in Austin as well, and this client was like, hey, we really need a trumpet player for to play like just some patriotic tunes, 20 minutes on either side, nothing, like a walk in the park. I call 25 trumpet players, and everyone's either booked or like can't get a sitter or something like that, and I like call them and I'm like, hey, I'll play it, but like you got to put expectations in the right place. But I'm like, I'm going to be fine, but it's like a trio thing, and you can only play the head to God Bless America so many times before you need to like, improvise over the form or something like that, with like a little trumpet, piano, bass trio, and play the first tune. And I'm like feeling good. And I'm like, all right, great. And put my horn to my face for the next tune. And I'm like, oh boy, oh boy. All right. A lot of the,
that's everyday life for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
We're playing all the time. We still have the same thing. It's like you play one tune, you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
This is how it's going to be. Yeah. It's like, with saxophone players, they get to change their reeds. Like, oh, this reed isn't good. We got to change. With the trumpet, it's like, you can't change your reed.
Exactly.
This is our reed. And so we're always trying to find a way to make things work in the moment.
Yeah. Well, there's the whole thing, right, of like whenever you miss a note, you like pull the horn away and like look at it, like kind of confused, like maybe like flutter the valves a little bit. Like, what's going on?
Yeah. Or you look at the guy next to you.
Yeah,
that's the secret. That's the real secret. You kind of look to the guy next to you and you're like, oh, what's going on over there?
That reminds me of the high school days of like being in rehearsal and then like looking, like missing it, just total clam, and then looking right to the person and then looking at the band director and being like,
absolutely,
those guys, like totally throw them under the bus.
That's how we work, man.
Yeah, of course the director knows who's clamming. Of course it's an 8-person trumpet section. It's not really hard to discern.
Absolutely.
They're hearing us play those region etudes every week. They're aware of whose tone is what. Man, well you picked a hell of a teacher to be able to kind of foster that growth, not only as a soloist but as a lead player. Like listening to you last night at the bar talk about those stories about Faddis was just the most kind of enriching thing. And it just goes to, me and Marcos Varela Do you know Marcos?
I know of him.
Bass
I've never
player?
met him. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we were just talking about how kind of, he was saying it's a little bit of a bygone era of this, kind of mentor-mentee relationship thing where like people bring them out on the stand, take them to the gigs, and like I even found like I think it was like a New York Post article, or it was some article from Faddis doing a sextet hit at the Standard back in like 2006, and they were like, yeah, and there was this new like hot cat on the scene that he brought out, and it was you, and then it's got to feel really validating and affirming. We kind of live in a world, and we work in a profession that like kind of is prone to letting insecurities get the better of us, but it's got to be the most like affirming thing to hear John Faddis say, Max is to me what I was to Diz. I mean, that's the most beautiful compliment.
He's the greatest cat. He's just one of the most generous people you'll ever meet with his time, and he's a busy guy, and with his knowledge. He's a great mentor, and he's a great friend. It's always in some ways it makes you uncomfortable because you're like, when people compare, make those comparisons. And I'm sure no one can play like John.
Yeah.
Nobody. Like there isn't a trumpet player walking the earth ever that can play like John.
Yeah.
And the way he plays, like you heard last night, we're talking with other trumpet players, Mike Sailors and John Lake. We're talking, we start talking about Faddis. It's like, it's like a different level of artistry that's happening. So it always makes you feel a little uncomfortable when you're like, well, I can't live up to that, right?
Yeah.
But we're trying to be ourselves while also, so highly influenced by a mentor type figure. So it's something that John went through with Dizzy. I know, like he talks about. He had a time where he was trying to sound exactly like Dizzy, and he could, and he still can.
Yeah.
But he can also sound exactly like Louis Armstrong if he wants to, because he studied all these things.
Yeah.
But then he sounds like, when he sounds best, he sounds like himself.
Yeah.
And you can hear those influences in his playing.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily all of it.
Yeah.
It's like there's so much more that he has in his writing style and the way he phrases melodies, his sound. The thing about Faddis is everyone gravitates towards the high notes, and I hear his sound and I'm just like, oh man, the sound, just from a trumpet player standpoint, like in the middle register from like a low C to a high C, how do you get the sound like that?
Yeah.
It's like, it's just pure. It's a pure sound. It's neither bright nor dark, or it's just, it has this dense nature core to it, but it's like a bell ringing, really. Like there's no inefficiency. It's just this vibrant sound. So that's the kind of thing that I hear when I hear Faddis play. The first thing I was like, oh man, it's sound.
Yeah.
Those are the things that I want to find,
Yeah. Did you go through a period yourself, you were saying he wanted to sound like Dizzy, and he could when he wanted to, and then you would hear him like at his best coming into his own sound. Did you have a similar thing where you wanted to sound like John?
I always want to sound like John.
Yeah, right. That's a gold standard. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's hard to play some of the things he plays. And I can do it sometimes. Sometimes people are like, wow, you sound just like Faddis. I'm like, no, I don't.
You're like, thanks.
Every so often I have a moment, and I've been, extremely fortunate that, I met John when I was in high school. I would follow him around to when he would come up to Connecticut. I would go to gigs that he was playing with the Carnegie Hall Jazz Band or with the Dizzy Gillespie All-Star Band. And so I started kind of getting to know him, doing just going to all of his gigs. And then when I ended up in the city for a while, I was following him to all the gigs in the city. And probably in the last 20 years, I would think I'd probably heard him play more than anybody, except his wife, maybe.
Yeah.
So, and over the course of time, yeah, he let me sit in a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I would go to the Blue Note. We would play 5 nights. I would sit in for 5 nights.
Yeah.
And sometimes instead of being one song, it ended up come up. Play the whole second set. Where I was figuring to play one song or something.
Yeah.
So there's been times where the two of us are standing next to each other and we might play something and I hear it on someone videoed it or something. I'm like, wow, that doesn't sound too bad. Or if you hear it without watching the video, every so you'll hear 1 or 2 notes. You'll be like, wow,
yeah,
that was pretty good. And then you realize it was you playing it.
Oh man, yeah, right.
Those moments are few and far between. Faddis is just operating on a level that the rest of us can't really attain.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to be objective about ourselves though, right? So like what you might be like, oh, there were like 1 or 2 notes and then few and far between, any of us in this room could listen to it and be like, shit. All right. Max is the cat, man. Max is the cat. And I mean, like, people are already saying that, man. I've like, I said that Steven, was like, hey man, if you need to get some trumpet players down here, he's like, first 2 names, Max Darché. Got it right. And I think the guy at South Congress Hotel knows it too now. Forever.
He definitely knows it now, yeah.
For sure. And he's like saying Max and John are the cats to bring down. Man, especially too with Faddis, you were saying that he's so gracious with time, and it's a testament to him as a person. But I think it's equal parts, there's something to be said in equal parts, not only about his graciousness of time, but also about your ability to foster a relationship, because like a lot of people like follow somebody around and it can have the inverse effect where then, the cat on stage is just like, oh God, this kid's here again. Okay, hey man, like, all right,
right.
Sure, let's grab a drink for a second or, but you were able to establish what has since been this really beautiful like mentor-mentee relationship, and even just like friend-to-friend relationship. How did you approach that? Because I'm sure a lot of, people who could look up to you or look up to Steven or Benny are like, I really want to get to know them, but I almost don't even want to go say anything to them because I don't want to mess up my first interaction or second or third. How did you approach that?
Right. Well, I mean, when I first met John, I was probably a junior in high school or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I was a relatively quiet kid. My mom brought me to a performance of the Carnegie Hall Jazz Band at the Schubert Theater in New Haven, mm-hmm. Connecticut. Mm-hmm. They would do the gig at Carnegie, and then the next week or something they would do 1 or 2 hits locally in Connecticut or New Jersey, I think. And she arranged to have to get me a lesson somehow. Yeah. So she kind of just put me on the spot. My mom would help put me on the spot sometimes when I was in high school, where I wasn't necessarily going to push myself into the spotlight or into a more stressful situation, like trying to play something in front of someone as accomplished as Faddis or someone like that. So I ended up getting a lesson, and it would just be like hanging out backstage and playing something for him, and he'd be talking about. Sometimes we'd be talking about something completely non-music related, or I might be playing something and he's commenting on something completely unrelated. Yeah. But he's listening to everything that I'm doing. Yeah. It took a while to get comfortable just to be able to play, I think, in front of him. But I think part of the reason why we get along is because I was never like pushy. Like I never expected to be, even when I would go to the gigs, I never expected to be on the bandstand. Yeah. Or I was like, oh, I'm going to go up there, Yeah. If he asked me up, fine. If he didn't, he didn't. I mean, there's been gigs where I've gone to where I haven't gone up, and sometimes you want to break from that too. Like, I mean, there's been gigs where I haven't brought my trumpet because I just wanted to listen. Yeah. So I think that's part of the reason why we got along. And John also went through it with Dizzy. So, mm-hmm. and John, when he was a kid, was also reportedly shy. Mm. Although I'm not sure if those are accurate or not, because he's not shy anymore.
Yeah, fair enough. How do you deal with, you know, this might seem like an obvious question. I told you I'd give you a couple softballs, but like, you know, I found that after the pandemic coming back and getting on gigs, I had anxiety, which is a thing that I never had before. I mean, I got involved in musical theater when I was like super young. So being on stage at 7 years old, you know, in the front line of like whatever choreographed thing was going on, kind of just like desensitized me to that whole thing. You know, occasionally there's like, you know, if you're playing for a crowd of like 5,000 people or something like that, then there might be a little bit of like jitters. But it wasn't until like coming back after that I had like a little bit more anxiety. And once I hit the stage, it was fine. But leading up to it, I was like, why am I feeling this way? I would like try to do like we were talking at dinner last night about like breathing, right? And how that really kind of just getting oxygen in the blood. I'd try to like do that, but it just wouldn't go away. Hit the stage, everything's fine. How do you deal with that? Does that affect you at all?
I don't really have like that's kind of stage fright type thing that some people deal with, but I have dealt with you know, I think everybody, you know, with the pandemic and everything dealt with some amount of anxiety at some point, for at least for a short time until everyone figured out what was a little bit more of what was going on,
Sure.
right? But musically, when I came back, when we started playing live again, it just worked out where I was playing a lot of gigs right when we first came back. The gigs were sparse, but they were just random things like an outdoor wedding, an outdoor like a restaurant gig.
Yeah.
Still in the winter though, so it's like we're in like a tent outside. So you know we're trying to be, you know, safe, but still play.
Yeah.
But you know, kind of like lower profile things, and which was good. You kind of work your way back in. But I do some breathing exercises and things like that to help with. I mean, they just help relax. You know, relax the body. I mean, oxygen's good for the body. Yeah. So I'm told.
So I'm told. Yeah, we've had it on good authority. It's actually we'd like to take a moment now, look directly in the camera, to thank our sponsor for this morning, which is Oxygen. Thank you very much for the thing. They're not a sponsor, but we'd like them to be.
Oxygen and water. Yeah.
Oxygen and water.
You can do a lot with that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, actually, now that you said water, I'm pretty sure we owe like crazy royalties to Nestle. So like, I don't know, we'll send you an invoice, you know, for whatever we'll just pass it along. Hit the forward button on the email. No.
Yeah. My spam filter doesn't work, so it might not come through. But
oh man, all right. You're like, oh no, you typed it in wrong. Could you send me the new email address? Oh man, you know, don't worry about it. Man, I'm curious about the projects because you do a lot of jobbing in the city. Projects that really kind of get you excited, that give you that natural kind of caffeine or adrenaline. For me, I mean, that's why I love having a big band, right? It just like makes me feel so energized. What is it for you where you feel most at home in a musical environment?
I love playing big band, and there's a fair amount of that going around New York. I get to do a fair amount. I play with the Birdland Big Band a lot as a sub, which is it's a great band, and it's a great venue to play. The music is great. The cats are all great. That's a band that I move around on all 4 trumpet spots. So. Okay. That's one of my favorite places to play. I love playing with Faddis' band. We don't gig that much, but he has something coming up in a couple of weeks. So that's always one of my favorite gigs. I mean, the music that he has from the Carnegie Band, just some amazing music that's not out there, that's not available, that was commissioned for the band exclusively. A lot of charts from Slide Hampton, Jimmy Heath, Jim McNeely, Frank Foster. So many great arrangements that they're so much fun to play. And because they're not published, a lot of them, you don't get to play them or hear them very often. Yeah. So that's one of my favorite gigs to play. I sub a little on Broadway. I enjoy that too. It's a different type of playing, but it keeps you kind of on your toes in a lot of ways. You have to be on point all the time.
Yeah. What's one of your favorite books to play on Broadway?
Chicago's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do that a fair amount. Been pretty lucky to meet the trumpet players that are on the show, Glenn Drews and Earl Gardner, who are like New York legends in their own right. And I've known Earl for a long time. He's an amazing lead player, and then Glenn Drews is just an amazing. He was an amazing lead player and just amazing soloist. Just like a trumpet player, man. The guy can play anything, and he's got this sound. There's something in his sound that's like an old school thing.
Yeah.
And I met him playing the Birdland band,
Okay.
and he got me onto the Chicago thing a little bit. So it's great playing that book. It's acoustic. That's one of my favorite things about playing that show is we have microphones for the house,
Sure.
but we don't have any monitors or anything.
Yeah.
So I think the band is 12 pieces. We're on stage, you're playing into the hall. You can hear yourself coming out of the hall.
Yeah.
So it's nice being in that acoustic environment because a lot of the environments we end up in, it's just the microphone stuck in front of you with a huge monitor and everything's too loud or you can't hear yourself. So that's cool. The music is fun to play on that book. And usually I'm either playing with Earl or Glenn a lot of times. So I'm playing second to somebody who's it's really fun trying to match someone who's playing lead with like such intent.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to follow. So and you're just trying to match the sound and the pitch and the phrasing and how is this note short, is this note long. So that's one of my favorites to do for sure.
Yeah. Man, Sailors told me about like the vibe where they would play. It was like 5:30 to 7:30 or something, Birdland Big Band. He's like, we would throw a few back and be like, shit, it's 7:48, and then just like dash, 2 blocks or whatever it is over to get to whatever show that they were playing. Do you find that a lot of your time I know you don't live necessarily like in the city proper, at least currently, but do you find that that's just kind of the norm is just always being like, all right, man, I'm gonna like get there like 12 minutes to spare, or like maybe not 12, but just always on the hustle?
There are cats that are like that. I think it's easier for instance, for the Broadway guys. There's a fair amount of Broadway guys on the Birdland band. When they're the regular cats and it's their show, and they know the scene, they know they're doing it 8 times a week.
Yeah.
So like for them, it's nothing.
Yeah, right.
So if they're hanging and they're coming in a couple minutes closer to the downbeat, as a sub, when you go on, you're not doing that. Like we're, I'm getting to the theater like an hour early.
Yeah, right.
Because I want to make sure I'm there. Like I got all my stuff together. But I think when the regular cats, that's how they can roll in. Just be like, they don't have to think about it. Like, they know the music.
Yeah,
that's a whole different scene. When you start doing, I haven't done a ton of it, but when you start doing the same show 8 times a week, the music.
Yeah.
You can be having a conversation, and if you and I are talking right now and someone in the background says the cue, like you would just stop and pick up your trumpet and start playing. Yeah. Because you're ready, and you know exactly what's happening. But yeah, I mean, the Birdland hang is great. It's a 5:30 to 7 hit now, so everyone's just hanging for a while before their show, and it's a great scene down there. The camaraderie between all the cats.
Yeah, right. Man, thinking about that, I just go into a sweat thinking of. Did you see the movie Birdman?
I didn't see it. No.
The Michael Keaton movie. Spoiler alert. There's just like a scene where he goes out for like a smoke, on a side door. And he's like wearing this robe that he has to go on the scene, and then the door shuts, but then his robe gets caught in the door, so then he has to run through Times Square like in nothing but like tighty whities, and then do the scene, walking through like the audience. It's just like, like the anxiety is like I like to be an early person. Sometimes it doesn't always happen that way, but it's just the idea of being like, all right, let's go play the show, walking up, and then downbeats in like 12 minutes is, Anxiety inducing.
Right. Yeah. I'm usually an early guy because I don't live in the city.
Yeah.
Like if I'm driving in, I have to account for traffic and parking. So I'm usually there early. And it's better, like you said, mentally.
Yeah.
Like not having to stress depends what the gig is too.
Sure.
You know?
Well, driving alone in New York City, but also worrying about parking, worrying about car, worrying about gas prices. I know that's like a very whatever thing to be like, oh, gas prices. Like let's also talk about the weather. Just such great weather, especially in Boston, by the way, just right now. Like
right
it's
now
amazing.
it's tremendous. Yeah.
I mean, just like sunny skies. I'm pretty sure it actually is. It's just below freezing. But yeah, like living in the city, what's the motivation, like not to live in the city and also take on that extra kind of stress of getting in for the hits?
Yeah, I lived in the city briefly when I was at Manhattan School of Music. And I ended up back in Westchester, New York, just north of the city, when I went to Purchase. And ever since then, I've been in that area. Part of the motivation was when I left Purchase, I had some amount of, private lesson teaching work in the area. So I was making some money doing that already. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't move back into the city.
Yeah.
And at this point, I think I'm used to the suburbs having a little more quiet, just a little bit more. I live right near the train tracks, so I hear the trains go by. So I still have that like city vibe a little, just enough.
Yeah, right.
But that was kind of my main motivation was initially the money.
Yeah,
it's just having I had enough where if I move into the city and then to come all the way up to teach. Then it doesn't make sense anymore. So that's kind of how I did it. And when you're doing it all the time, you're not really thinking about the driving thing. It's like, it's just part of what you do.
Yeah. Fair enough. Man, if there was a project that you could do, I know this is kind of similar to how I was asking about, where do you feel most at home musically, but let's say that, either as a sideman or band leader, there was a project where nothing was an issue. If money wasn't an issue, if personnel, if time, if location, what's something that like keeps you up at night and be like, oh man, that would be the thing?
To play
or to produce, band lead?
Man, I'm a bit of a traditionalist in terms of I love listening to all the the classic. I'm a bebop guy at heart, but in terms of like big band stuff, being able to play like all the Dizzy Gillespie music, or I love playing with Faddis's thing with the Carnegie music. All these types of those are two projects that I love doing, and I have done some, but that's music that I kind of grew up listening to. Dizzy Gillespie, big band,
Yeah.
Like playing all those arrangements is so much fun. And it's not, and Dizzy's music on the big band side wasn't necessarily as complicated as like Thad Jones or something like that. But it was just some swing and stuff, and it was all about Dizzy's playing,
Yeah.
I mean, just incredible. The charts are just, they complemented his playing, It was like, because what he was doing was off the charts, like so complicated and so rhythmically, technically, just everything he played. So I think it just ended up being the perfect balance. I love doing that stuff, but having a big band, as you know, is a interesting thing to do these days, financially.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You are not wrong. And do you have any desire to do a project, or whether it's a recording project or a show, like as a band leader?
Yeah, I think about it sometimes. I haven't sat down and really like written out my own music and gotten enough material together to do it yet. But it's something that's always, I think it's always on your mind a little bit. You have days where you where you wake up and you're like, I should get this together and put something together. And then you have days where you don't feel as inspired, right?
Sure.
It's a process. I think I'll get there. I haven't done it yet, but it's something that's always in the back of your mind to try to put something together.
Yeah. It's also brilliant to be able to, like, pop into a bunch of different musical situations, right? Like, you're also very heavily involved in, like, the Latin jazz scene.
I am,
too.
Yeah. I do fit into that.
Yeah. So what led you to that specific scene?
When I was at Purchase, there's a great trumpet player, Ray Vega, who's another just a master of the trumpet, and he was teaching the Latin jazz ensemble at Purchase. So I was doing that with him, and twice a week we would have rehearsal. And after a couple of years, when he started to need a sub, he was doing some salsa gigs around New York.
Yeah.
So I started subbing when they needed like a second trumpet player. He would play first, I would play second.
Yeah.
And then he got a gig at University of Vermont, so he left town.
Okay.
And since I had kind of been the regular sub, I ended up into that scene a little bit, which is a great scene. It's fun. It's fun music to play. The hours are late usually, which is a little late sometimes.
Sure.
But it's a really like it's groove oriented music, so it's kind of fun to play. So I got into that, and then through that I got into more, a bunch of different salsa bands. I've played with most of the bands in New York that are the top salsa stuff, and then I got into through that kind of. I got into Bobby Sanabria's band, big band, which is a great band, and it's not just Bobby's band does a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So it's at its heart, it's like a Latin jazz thing, but we do we get into all different types of music. I mean, from some more funky stuff into straight ahead jazz. But I think the heart of it is, it's jazz with some sort of Latin beat to it.
Yeah.
So that's a great band. It's a lot of fun to play in. It's like 20 pieces or something. It's a huge band. It's a big band. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I saw the thing that you guys just did not too long ago with the West Side Story hit. Very hip, man.
Yeah. That project came out pretty cool. We did a live record at Dizzy's, and. Yeah, it was a great idea when Bobby came up with this great idea to kind of rework as we would do it in the band,
Yeah.
And it worked out great. That was a hard thing to record live, but we were all running on fumes at the end. But
For sure. Well, between your time at MSM and Purchase, was that also where you got connected with Fifey?
No, actually. I was at MSM before Steven was there. I got connected through Fifey through a saxophone player, Andrew Gould, who's a great one of the great saxophone players in New York, really. And Steven needed a lead player at the time, and Andrew went to Purchase, and it's still through MSM and Purchase in some way, because Andrew and I knew each other from Purchase.
Sure.
And we were good friends. We played together all the time, and we still do. And then he went to MSM for his grad degree, and that's where he met Steven.
Okay.
So the two of them started playing together, and then at some point they needed a lead player, and Steven wasn't sure who to call, and I think he asked Andrew, and Andrew's like, "Oh, this is the guy you should call."
Yeah, right.
So I mean, that was a great thing. I'm grateful for that, because I've been playing with Steven now for, I think, since 2018, maybe early 2018. I mean, we had that whole year like break in between with the pandemic and everything, but
I'm sorry, what was that? What was it?
Yeah, you may have heard that we stopped playing music for.
News to me, man. Mentally, I'm on March 15th, 2020.
Right. Here we go. So, that was a That's been a great thing to be a part of. Stephen writes some amazing music, and we did a marathon recording session a couple of years ago, and the record came out last year. So came out really well. It was like a 12-hour day, like back-to-back days. We worked hard.
Every time that I think that he has run out of recorded material, it's like, and here's the roll of the rhythm section, or here's this other thing, or like, It Could Happen to You arrangement that we're about to do. It's like, I thought for sure that was like coming out on Kinetic, and it's like, oh, whoa, he's got even more big band charts. So for you to say marathon.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we did like 2 albums worth of music on that session. Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot of music. Yeah, he's always writing something.
Yeah, man. Oh man, all the cats in that band are just unbelievable too. I mean, it's funny too. The more that you start to pay attention, I guess this is like just with anything, but you start to see all these like familiar faces. It's it wouldn't be an Off the Bandstand episode if I didn't make some sort of Marvel connection. But it's like the Avengers of the New York scene, man. Like here we go, like everybody's coming together. But it is cool just to see how they all overlap. A really great example of that the other day was Law Reserve had their 5th anniversary kind of takeover night at the Django, and so then they had all of their different artists be there and take a set in different collaboration or configurations. Sorry. It's just cool to see how like everybody in the scene kind of crosses over into each other's projects and bring something that is uniquely them, but also completely are flexible to fit the mold of whatever that specific person's going to do.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. Steven's band is great. Like you said, it's like a whole group of the younger jazz cats in the city. It's a lot of fun to play with. It's like the Avengers, like you said.
Yeah, right. The young swingers. Yeah, right. We need to get oh my God, we got to get a comic book of the young swingers, like, and all the different people. I'm putting it on the list, man. We talked about, projects, if money or time or all these different things were no issue. That's the thing. We're going to create an issue of a comic book.
There's a market for everything, man.
There is absolutely. I think we will sell dozens of
at least dozens,
books.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Dozens, for sure. We'll just make sure to order thousands and just sit on a bunch of copies, like a good CD.
Absolutely.
Well, man, let me ask you a couple of speed round questions, whether it's from Faddis or it's from any of the people that you have kind of either played with or been mentored by. What is one of the greatest pieces of advice that you've received?
Wow, that's a tricky one, man. I think with John, it was to go back to the history, go back to the beginning of the music.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you lose something, As a student, that's one of the greatest things that I learned. And you hear Clark Terry say things like that. I think his saying was, imitate, assimilate, innovate. That's kind of, and when you go back and listen to Dizzy Gillespie, early Dizzy records, he sounded just like Roy Eldridge, and you can hear things with Lee Morgan trying to sound like Clifford Brown. Like there was intent, or like people have those. I'm sure you've heard people talk about like Lester Young. You speed it up, it sounds like Bird, right? So I think that's one of the best pieces of advice I got from John, is going back and learning Louis Armstrong. Because if you don't know Louis Armstrong as a trumpet player, every trumpet player is coming out of that somehow.
Yeah.
So I guess that would be one of the best pieces of advice I've gotten.
Word. Man, if there was a record that you would tell everybody to go check out right now, it's like, boom, stop the episode. Or there's like 3 minutes left. Finish the episode, and then go listen to the album.
That's a tricky one. Wow, if you're talking about cats today, I can't pick one, man. I can't pick just one.
Give me a few.
If you want to hear like some crazy trumpet stuff and some amazing writing and just a whole bunch of different types of music on that. Taranga is a great album that Faddis did in like 2007 or something.
Okay.
Really amazing. Other than that, I would probably pick a Tom Harrell album of it. Again, it's hard for me to pick just because I'm such a huge fan of his playing. But yeah, man, those are the questions that I can't answer. Like when you ask me that, I just see this like line of things going through my mind of just like this album, this album, this album, this album.
Yeah, man, I'm so glad that you brought that up because I did want to ask about your experience with Tom Harrell, because Tom Harrell like was one of the first, I guess, more current trumpet players that a teacher in high school, whenever I was like sophomore year, like hipped me to. It was like Paradise, that 2001 record. And, you know, I was just like, whoa, this is like, just the sound was captivating. But then the more that you come to learn about him, the more that you're like, this is, you know, one of the most interesting and like inspiring, you know, figures in the music today, you know, or just like in the music in general. What was your experience with him?
Oh man, I mean, he's just an incredible musician, incredible trumpet player, incredible writer. I love writing down things that he plays, trying to figure out what he's playing over. He plays great lines, so I'm trying to figure out what he's playing over 2-5-1s and things like that. I got to play with him. We did a Dizzy tribute a couple of years back, and it was Faddis's quartet and then Tom Harrell, and then myself and Bruce Harris, a great trumpet player in New York, and we came out and we all played. But so I got to work with him there a little bit. He's just a really, really nice cat. You know, talking to him backstage, super inspiring, and hearing Faddis and Tom play, two like very different trumpet players, right? But they feed so well off of each other because they're both really like beboppers.
Yeah.
Like Tom's playing is coming out of bebop, and so is John's. It's like they both play so different, but hearing them play together, you know, Faddis will start something, Tom will start something, and Faddis will. Pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Really amazing stuff.
Yeah, man. And listening to him speak too, like you get it all, you know, like just listening to him talk. Like I was watching this like interview of him, and you know, it just felt so honest, like the most honest, you know. I'm trying to find another descriptor, but I really think that's the only way to say it. You know, it's funny, like the way that he ends the interview is he just goes, "I think you have, you know, more than enough to blackmail me forever," and gets up and just walks out of the room. You know, you could also do that. We could end that way. You're not wired in. We're wireless right now, so you could do it.
Absolutely.
But man, let me ask you the final question. I gave you the heads up last night, which is we all have gigs from hell where things go wrong. It could be a logistical thing. It could be like what's happening at this gig. We truly have had like the entire gamut from crazy parties for the cartel, different from the one that I talked about last night, believe it or not, to being shot at a gig, to, you know, truly spans the whole scope. What is your gig from hell?
Just picking one?
No, you can give me as many.
Well, you know, I don't have anything crazy, but a lot of it is logistical stuff, like where a lot of people, I think, don't realize the amount that, like, for instance, what we're doing here, or, you know, playing this weekend, like the logistics behind the enormous amount of stuff that's going on to make all this happen.
Right.
Even I don't even realize it because I'm not on the production like level, but people don't realize how, you know, you might go see a band play for 2 hours and it could be like, for them it's like 8 hours because they were moving in and out, you know, traveling.
Sure.
So I mean, for me, I mean, I've done gigs. I got stranded we did a gig in Bermuda, and we got stranded in the airport because it was icing in Newark, New Jersey, and the airport in Bermuda is pretty small.
Yeah.
So I was stuck there. It was with John Faddis' big band, and we were in the airport for like 10 hours or something like that, and there's nothing there.
Yeah.
And everything was closed. There's nothing there anyways, but
Yeah.
they were legally required at one point to reopen whatever food place was there
Yeah.
because we had been there for so long.
Whoa.
That was a crazy one. I mean, traveling wise, I've done some. I did a salsa gig where we took a bus from Washington Heights from the GW Bridge. It was like at the tail end of like some kind of tropical storm.
Yeah.
We driving up to like outside of Boston, played a salsa gig. Probably hit from like 11 to 1 in the morning, 1:30 or something, maybe 2 o'clock. Then we came back, and we're on this bus, and this was not a legal bus. You know, like the driver was not supposed to be driving this bus.
Oh man.
And we're going. I mean, we're going like in a. You know, it wasn't a full-size bus. It was like one of these like tour buses that you see. Like we were going over 100 through like Massachusetts and Connecticut at like 4 a.m.
Oh no!
And the guys on the bus were just like, you know, your body's not used to going that fast.
Yeah, right.
It was a total freak out, man.
Yeah.
We were freaked, and then we almost ran out of gas. So and the bus takes diesel.
Yeah.
So we're trying to find somewhere to get, like, where can we stop at, like, you know, 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah, right.
That's gonna have diesel.
Yeah.
It was bad. That was a rough one. So a lot of times it's like the travel, man, like getting to the gig, getting back from the gig, where things go haywire, or the weather. I did a gig last year. We did a gig outside. It was like 98 degrees, 100% humidity. And we were in direct sunlight, and we did like sound check, rehearsal, like an hour set, half hour off, another hour set. It was an all day thing.
Was that a Sanabria hit?
Yes.
So you were in the white.
We were all white. Yeah, we were wearing all white. Yeah. And we were sweating. I mean, it was just like, and they were giving us these little packets of sunscreen because we were in direct sunlight. It's just like beating up on you, and it was intense, man. You're drinking water, just like bottle after bottle of water, and you don't have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, right.
Like, it was crazy. I mean, the saxophone players had like whatever like towels they had for us to you know, just to wipe our face. They had them like over their heads, over their faces.
Right.
Like it was some of the more like intense conditions that I've ever played in.
And that's even grosser because like, I don't even like the feeling of sunscreen.
I can't stand it, man.
Because you're sweating, and then it's like a film over you. So then like sweating, film, and then you're in these like white suits almost. Oh, man.
It was intense, man. I mean, I can't stand the sunscreen either, but the only thing I hate worse than sunscreen is sunburn. So I have to live with one or the other, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, man. But, you know, the concert ended up being great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, those are the things that we end up with a lot of times as musicians, doing these crazy commute to get to the gig or to get back, or crazy weather things.
Yeah.
Like we're dealing with it now, right? A little bit.
Right. Well, we're going to make it through, man. Well, as far as I'm concerned, because of my hate of sunscreen, you now have the predominant gig from hell story. Playing in the sunlight with sunscreen on and a suit. No bueno for me, my friend.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Well, Max, man, what a pleasure to sit down with you, man.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.